Ever since it was first stated in a game theory video on January 1st this year, a very controversial theory has floated around the Five Nights at Freddy's community. That being that the main character of Security Breach, Gregory, the player character, is actually a robotic recreation of the crying child, the bite victim of 1983, Evan Afton. I've been a staunch opponent to this theory the entire time. Frankly, I just want new characters and I want to let sleeping dogs lie. There's compelling evidence for it, I just don't like it. However, I've been thinking, and I think the Gregbot theory is almost right. I do think Evan Afton is in this game somewhere. I think the crying child has his presence all over Security Breach, but I don't think it's through Gregory. I think it's through the Blob. At least, that's the idea I have for today. So slices, put on your aprons, and let's make ourselves a theory. In case you haven't seen the game theory video, which would be weird that you found my video before that one, but just in case, the basic theory boils down to in 1983, when Evan Afton dies from the bite. Yeah, that's fair. No. When the crying child dies in 1983, he's recreated as a robot, just like one of the characters in the Silver Eyes novels. That's what's meant when it said, "I will put you back together." That robot is who we play as in Security Breach, Gregory. There's a lot more to it, so for context and more evidence, go watch that video. But after this one, please, it really hurts it in the algorithm if you skip off right away, so just wait till the end, I'll put the links, trust me. Anyways, I don't believe this theory. I still think Gregory is just either a random child or a child we know but don't know who it is yet. I think Gregory's human. Maybe he's some child important in the lore, but a robotic version of Gregory isn't it. I don't buy it. However, I do think that the crying child is here. So let's gather our ingredients and examine what evidence we have of that. The last living moments we see of Evan Afton are in the FNAF 4 minigames, where we see him being relentlessly bullied by his older brother, Michael Afton, until eventually being killed accidentally by Fredbear's mouth closing in on his head, causing the bite of 1983. We then see several times some mysterious figures promising to put this kid back together. And we see the first set of the missing children incident kids have a Happiest day party to help him move on. Also, the entirety of FNAF World is kind of a reimagining of these events. Up until now, most of the community agrees on what these events mean. Happiest Day helps him pass on, and that leaves the rest of the missing children incident kids to be stuck in the suits, then turn into Ennard, and so on and so forth. But is that what happens in Happiest Day? Let's look again. In FNAF 4's epilogue, we see the Fredbear plush promising to put him back together, telling him that we are still his friends. In FNAF 3, we see all of them reunite with the crying child at his birthday. He gains a golden Freddy mask before they all disappear. Even in FNAF World, the same lines are repeated, except for an addition of, "the pieces are in place." The main problem I have with this is if the Happiest Day minigame is supposed to show Evan Afton moving on, it does a really bad job of showing that. What it does show us is a group of souls, each being identified by a different animatronic, giving a new soul its own identity. Then they disappear, just leaving the masks. This doesn't look like a soul being put to rest, and if it is, all of them are being put to rest, which we know isn't true, at least for the puppet. This looks like an indoctrination to me. Maybe this isn't just a birthday party, but a welcome party. Think about it. At this point, we're pretty sure the crying child doesn't die at the bite of 83. Instead, he gets seriously injured, put into a coma possibly, and dies at a hospital. We know this from FNAF 4. We see the IV, we see the pills. It's very clear that the victim of the bite of 83 was in a coma for at least some time before death. If the crying child died in unrest in a hospital, he wouldn't have just automatically inhabited the Golden Freddy suit. He would have been a lost soul wandering around looking for a place to return to. The puppet gave gifts and gave life to the children who were stuffed in the animatronic suits, but if they came across this lost soul, what could they do? It probably would have taken more work to help him. Something like grounding him in a familiar location, like a birthday party. What if the Happiest Day isn't being put to rest, but a day of coming home to comforting friends who promise they'll still be with him? If you don't believe that, I have another piece of really compelling evidence in Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator. In that game, when the animatronics kill you, you get a random voice line, a lot of them having lore. Most of them make sense, but there's one in particular that always stuck out to me, Molten Freddy. For those of you who aren't aware, Molten Freddy is most likely a cocktail of souls of the missing children incident kids. Briefly, William Afton kills 5 kids in the Freddy Fazbear Pizza location and stuffs them into animatronic suits. The puppet helps them to possess the suits they're in so they can live again. That restaurant closes and the FNAF 2 location opens up. The animatronics are in a withered state state but still persist there as well, and William Afton starts taking apart pieces of them to experiment on. FNAF 2 closes after another incident, possibly William killing again, and the old bots are saved for a possible new location. Then the FNAF 1 location. A recreation of the older Freddy Fazbear Pizza opens up, with the same older animatronics but refurbished. William Afton comes in after the restaurant closes down and collects as many pieces of the animatronics as possible to experiment on. He then takes them to his sister location bunker to melt them down into Remnant, a silvery metal liquid infused with a soul, or in this case, as they've been melted together, a mixture of all 5 souls of the missing children. He then uses the scooper to infuse this remnant into the Funtime animatronics. This makes them erratic and violent, being a weird blend of people. The Funtimes exit their exoskeletons and form together to make Ennard, the closest thing they can be to whole again. After a while, they realize that Elizabeth's soul from Circus Baby is fully whole, so for whatever reason, either to help the confusion or just vote her out, she is ejected from Ennard and becomes Scrap Baby. The remaining wires then form into Molten Freddy. So, the long and short of it is Molten Freddy is an amalgamation of metal made of the melted down and blended together souls of the missing children incident kids. I know I said briefly, but it's FNAF lore, so give me a break. Anyway, if Molten Freddy is this mixture of non-Afton kids, why is this one of his lines when he kills you?
One big happy family, together again.
That's weird, right? Like, this could just be referring to William, Elizabeth, and Michael being in the same place. But why would Molten Freddy say this? How would that amalgamation even clearly know what's going on? Well, I think that this line is hinting to us that there's an Afton still stuck inside Molten Freddy. And if Elizabeth, Michael, and William are all accounted for, that just leaves us with Evan. Think about it. We know that Cassidy is in Molten Freddy. After all, we see hints of Cassidy throughout FNAF 6, FNAF Ultimate Custom Night, and even Security Breach. So Cassidy would have to be there, and it would make the most sense to be in Molten Freddy. So Golden Freddy is most likely melted down into Remnant along with the other children. The same Golden Freddy whose mask gets put on the Crying Child in Happiest Day. So if Golden Freddy is possessed by Cassidy and Crying Child, like a lot of us believe, myself included, then it would make sense that both of them are still in Molten Freddy. Okay, so we've established that it's entirely possible that Evan didn't move on, but is instead with the missing children incident kids in Molten Freddy up until the end of FNAF 6. What makes me think that he's in the Blob? Well, let's mix our ingredients together and see what comes out of it. 2 things stick out to me here: the Nightmare staff bots, and funnily enough, another game theory video. This video was actually originally intended to be about the post-it note room in Security Breach, because I created a community post on YouTube about what I should make the next video on, and users like these guys suggested not only the post-it room, but the Nightmare staff bots. By the way, if you want to see posts like that and be more engaged, the subscribe button is free, I'm just saying. Anyway, you know, that really confusing lore dump room with a lot of Happiest Day illusions, the Afton family recreated, filled with Nightmare staff bot heads. So just to make sure I wasn't treading old ground, I went and rewatched the game theory video posted about it on February 2nd. His theory boiled down to the room being a place where the Crying Child robot, Gregory, started to form a consciousness and recreate those memories that were coming back to him. The problem is, I found that really compelling. So how can I rectify that if Gregory isn't Evan Afton in a robotic form? Well, the Blob. The Blob is likely a pile of melted robotics from the Pizzeria Simulator fire, a pile dominated by the missing children incident kids' agony. There's one problem with that though. Does Evan Afton have agony? Sure, he was bullied every day, but thus far in the series, we only see agony form due to excruciatingly painful death, not just a shitty life. Could it be possible that Evan's agony is weaker or even non-existent, yet he still survived in a agony-like shell of the kids who tried to protect him so frequently, like we see in Happiest Day? If so, then this agony-fueled blob could have one soul in it, Evan Afton. If so, this could explain the post-it note room. If the blob is this writhing mass of agony and anger, but slowly being overtaken by the consciousness and soul of Evan Afton, these notes make a lot of sense. They start out messy and scribbled, and slowly add more and more of Crying Child's last memories. Like MatPat said, the last thing he saw, the lights in the room, the party. All of the evidence MatPat brought up to link this room with Evan Afton tracks, but in this case, it's not Gregory, it's the blob, someone who would have a reason to be in the sewer, as it's likely that it's trying to amass more pieces of itself and it needs a big open area to move around in, like that weird sewer dump place. What about the Nightmare staff bots? Well, we don't really have a compelling argument for them. All we know is they look like Nightmare-ion, they have in your dreams written on a bunch of them, and they're generally pretty weird. What if these robots are the staff bots taken over by the Blob? For one, this could be the Centurions being sent to get more pieces to make the Blob bigger. And after all, the place where we see the most of these staff bots is in those dumps, the place where the Blob could most freely move around. So what would this mean for the DLC? Well, let's put this mixture into the oven and see what kind of theory bakes out. If Evan Afton's soul or agony is slowly gaining consciousness in the Blob, and William is presumably now fused into the Blob as well, the help me we see could be a help for the Blob. Gregory, Freddy, or maybe even Vanessa sees that now the Blob has an internal struggle, a massive agony being fought over between the agony of a murderer and the soul of a child. If William wins, he'll be more powerful than ever, but if Evan wins, he could help the Blob move on for good and end everything. We as Light Up Sketchers Girl just need to do anything we can to help Evan dominate the Blob. At least, that's the theory we baked for today. What do you guys think? I feel like this is a way more compelling way to explain all the allusions to the Afton family in the post-it room without having to have Gregory be some sort of robot. I do like this theory, but it does conflict with my last theory about Molten Freddy being the second missing children incident kids. If you want to know why I thought that, go ahead and check out the video. Also, cards for the game theory videos I mentioned in this, please go check them out if you haven't, or check them out anyway. You know, they're a good channel. Shout out to the best patrons, the Toasted Slices, Emberisk, Zenith, Tommy Woodard, Isle, Raven Eris, Charlie Bean, and Lovey Puppy. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, Slices.